We are losing our identity as people, as Jews, and as human beings. When you send your people, your youngster, to kill, and many of them will die there, when you tell them that there is no political goal to this war, immediately what happened? The war becomes the end and not the mean.
This is Netanyahu again in this conversation about moving from the first, second, and now the third stage in Gaza. The third step will be the creation of a new security regime in the Gaza Strip, the removal of Israel's responsibility for day-to-day life there, and the creation of a new security reality for the citizens of Israel. What do you think that means? Do you think that means carving out a whole piece of Gaza? Oh, okay.
This is what it means.
Wow, harsh criticism for Benjamin Netanyahu and the current government of Israel. And that's coming from the former head of Shin Bet. His name is Ami Ayalon, and he's got a lot more to say. But before we get to more of this incredible interview, Cenk, I gotta say, I have a lot of respect for Israelis who are willing to sit down and share a perspective that, based on polling, the majority of Israelis do not agree with. Thanks for watching. Our audience has helped build TYT into the media giant it is today. Together, we can accomplish anything. Support our work and join us at tyt.com/team.
So what I love about Jewish culture is that you're supposed to question authority. You're supposed to question the rabbi. It's not like a lot of other religions where you just sit there and they lecture at you and you're supposed to shut up and learn it and not question it, right? So democracy is kind of built into Jewish culture in a lot of ways. And so part of what I love about what this brother is saying is we're going to lose our own sense of identity. And look, the politics of the moment being what it is, I'm not allowed to say it because I'm not from that identity, okay? They say, who the hell are you to say we're gonna lose our identity? But this is what I think. This man speaks for me. And so, by the way, if it's gonna bother you that I agree 100% with the former head of Shin Bet, okay, then it bothers you, okay? But everything he's saying is exactly what I think. I think that the occupation and the war is not only disastrous for the Palestinians, but is an existential threat for the Israelis, both in terms of security and their actual identity, and a beautiful culture that this war and the occupation is eroding.
Well, one of the concerns that Ami Ayalon has is not only that the Israeli population will lose the moral high ground and their identity, but more importantly, how in the short term, Benjamin Netanyahu's political ambitions is going to drive Israel into a broader regional war. Take a look.
Given that there might be something big breaking out against Lebanon, I mean, look, this is what one of the most respected military analysts in Israel, Amos Harel of Haaretz, says. Nasrallah, who is obviously the head of Hezbollah, apparently suspects that Israel is headed for a general war and is preparing his organization for that possibility. And then what happens?
We shall have war.
And then?
We shall have war.
And after that?
And we shall have more war. And we shall stop, and later we shall have more war. What should we learn after the 7th of October? Which was probably the most horrible moment in our history. We should learn, first of all, that we shall not have security as long as we shall not end occupation. This is what Hamas told us. And we shall not have democracy as long as we shall not end the occupation.
I can't emphasize enough how important it was to hear that specific message from the former head of Shin Bet and an Israeli. Because, oftentimes, Cenk, when we talk about October 7th, obviously we've condemned it in the strongest terms. The atrocities were absolutely disgusting. But you also want to explain how things got to that point. And so when you talk about the occupation and how that leads to these flare-ups in violence, people try to smear you as someone who's trying to make excuses for the violence. No, it's not an excuse for the violence. It's an explanation for why the violence happened in order to prevent it from happening in the future. And essentially, that is what he's saying in that message, in that part of the interview.
So guys, this is really important because it's not just about Israel. We've seen it in every context, including in America. The warmongers always painted as good versus evil And that if you even understand quote unquote evil, the other side, whatever it might happen to be, and whether it's actually evil or not, that if you try to understand them, that you're part of the evil. And that we have to attack you and we have to shut you down, and that you are against the forces of good. So this is the kind of simplistic, honestly moronic way that war hawks think. And so the reality is, no, sometimes war is bad for you. I mean, come on. We have to explain it in like super simple terms. And by bad for you, we don't mean just bad for the people that you're killing. We mean bad for that country. Did the Iraq war help us here in America? No, the warmongers, the same warmongers, both in America and Israel, told us, oh, it's gonna be great. We're gonna be greeted as liberators. They literally said that. They're gonna throw roses at our feet. The lunatics said that. It was gonna cost almost nothing. They all said these things. And what did it do? All it got was us more grief, more killing from our side, more killing of their side. And so they're lying to you to perpetuate a war that only helps those particular political people, but it always hurts your own country as well. So, and by the way, it's of course true on the other side too, where the radicals on the Palestinian side will say, oh, the only answer is war and not diplomacy. There are cooler heads on both sides, but you have to actually choose them. So here he makes the point that 75% of Israelis are actually against Netanyahu. That's true, I've seen the polling. But are they against the actual war? Are they against the occupation? And the answer is not exactly. But that's why his voice is so important, for people to speak out and say, we need to save and to protect Israel, let alone what we do to the Palestinians or starting this disastrous war in Lebanon, which I'll come back to.
I mean, look, I remember after 9/11, and maybe this is the reason why I'm not as quick to judge and be, so critical of the Israeli population, the civilians, because I remember what Americans were like after 9/11. And I remember how voices against the war in Iraq, especially, were few and far between. They were criticized. Literal careers were destroyed because public opinion in America was so pro-war at that time because everyone was scared. Everyone was worried that we had all of these scary, radical, Muslims in other countries looking to destroy us, looking to do terrorist attacks on US soil. And so public opinion was, again, very much in favor of military action in the Middle East. And I understand how that human emotion of fear can lead you in a bad direction. But at the same time, those few voices that we're talking about here, including the gentleman we're hearing from, they're important because eventually more and more Israelis who agree with him are gonna feel comfortable coming out and speaking out against the methods the Israeli government has been using against the Palestinian people, the occupation, and how it has not yielded good results for Israel, certainly not for the Palestinians. But even if you don't care about the Palestinians at all, if all you care about is the safety of Israelis, doing an occupation on Palestinians or on Palestinian territory is not gonna keep Israelis safe, as we've already seen.
So when I was 100% against the Iraq war, remember that at the time it was an incredibly unpopular opinion in media and politics. In the country, the country was split, but even then 70% of Americans wanted to go to war with Iraq because they thought that Saddam Hussein had attacked us on 9/11, which is of course untrue, and I knew that. So, but was I un-American? Did I hate America for trying to keep us out of the Iraq war? Now, by the way, a lot of people at the time did say that. They said, oh, you're un-American if you don't. And now, by the way, almost all of those people have come back around and are now saying, well, you were right. And it was terrible for America because they were almost all right-wingers, and almost all those right-wingers in the population, not in media and politics, have come back around and said, look, sorry, totally wrong. It was terrible for America, and you were trying to help. And in this case, when you say, hey, I think this is bad for Israel, they go, anti-Semite. Okay, all right, well, it's stupid and it's unproductive, and it's exactly what happened before. And yes, we agree with the former head of Shin Bet because we do want what's best for Israel as well as the Palestinians.
Yes.
And that's not hard to understand, but there are forces at play here that want to drive towards more war. So they want absolutism on all sides, which is not the correct answer. Finally, it gets us to Lebanon. If we go into this, if Israel goes in the war with Lebanon, they'll make 1,000 excuses. Oh, just like Iraq. Iraq didn't attack us on 9/11. Do you know why they haven't hit Hezbollah? Haven't started a massive war with Hezbollah yet? And Hezbollah hasn't started a massive war with them. There's rockets back and forth, but not massive. Why? Because Hezbollah didn't do October 7th. Hamas did.
Right.
Right? Al-Qaeda did 9/11, not Iraq. But hey, Hezbollah, whatever, they're kind of allied. They're kind of goddamn Muslims. They also hate the occupation. And you could say, oh, well, they were also firing missiles and I got a lot of grievances and war is always the right answer. I forgot the question, but war is the answer. Then you'll say, okay, yes, my tribe is right. Let's go kill them all. Okay, but what's gonna happen is a massive war. Then America's gonna have to fund it and we're gonna have to partially fight it. And the American citizens are going to start getting more and more pissed because these days the establishment does not control media anymore.
Or public opinion.
Yeah, and well, media drives public opinion.
That's true, yeah.
Before they lied to the American people and told them that Saddam had attacked us, but when he hadn't. That's why 70% believed he had attacked us and believed in going into Iraq. Now, the Joe Scarboroughs and everyone in mainstream, almost everyone in mainstream media is still like, oh, Israel's the greatest. They had no choice. They had to bomb, kill. They had no choice. Okay, that's your propaganda. I'm used to it my whole life, but now you can't contain social media. So people are seeing the actual reality and they say, oh, Hamas uses human shields. And then you see the Israelis put a nearly naked Palestinian man in front of on top of their car, using him as a human shield.
Well, they're about to talk about that in the next clip. And I thought what he had to say about that loss of moral high ground was important. Let's take a look.
You saw the justified horror that was unleashed over the weekend when a picture of a wounded Palestinian tied to the hood of one of your military vehicles was driven out of the Jenin area, and the Palestinians accused your forces of using them as a human shield. The Israeli military then shortly thereafter said those forces violated orders and standard operating procedures. They'll be investigated. Do you feel they're losing their morality, their humanity?
Not they, we are losing. We are losing our identity as people, as Jews, and as human beings.
I think what he says there is powerful. And what the media is unable to stop, something that they were able to stop maybe previously, is the images and the videos that are going viral online on these social media platforms. They are unable to maintain the floodgates. The floodgates have burst open, and anyone who's paying attention sees videos like the one that was just talked about in that clip, Cenk, where you have a wounded Palestinian strapped onto the hood of that vehicle and just driven, allegedly to the hospital. I don't know what ended up happening with that individual, but that's just one example. Hind is the person, the child who haunts me in my nightmares. A little 8-year-old who died alone in a car after all of her relatives who were in the vehicle with her were killed by Israeli shelling. Later, days after the emergency workers were able to get to her, they found that she was dead, also by Israeli shelling. And that kind of stuff stays with people. It has an impact on the way they perceive the Israeli government, certainly. But for people who have difficulty differentiating and people who don't really want to be understanding about the fear that Israeli civilians might be feeling right now after October 7th, they're gonna have ideas of who Israelis are. And is that right? Is that fair to them? Is that what they want?
Yeah, so there's two different things here, guys. So first, there's world reaction versus US reaction, and it's almost completely because of media. So in the old days, people would see Israeli atrocities in other parts of the world because of Al Jazeera and some other BBC and other places that reported it. But here in America, we would never see it because if you said, showed almost anything that was, yes, it's like I remember the controversy when Israel did a bombing and a little Palestinian boy had been killed and he washed up on shore. And that made it onto American media, and it was a giant controversy because they're like, how dare you show something that does not show Israel in a positive light? Right. Like, what an outrage. I mean, no one questioned its veracity. They were just like, you just shouldn't show it. So now things are different. Even, look, one of our members wrote in, next TYT reporter said, credit to CNN for having this guy on in the first place. Before this genocide, they would have never had someone like that on, not in a million years. I think that is actually true. So what's happened is the rest of the world used to see all the crimes, the war crimes, etc., of Israel, and they see the obvious brutality of the occupation. But here in America, we got this gauze, filter, if you will, to use Instagram words here, lingo. And Israel's gorgeous and beautiful, and it goes, God, terrorists, Muslims, you know how they had it coming, right? But now even we're seeing it, one, because of social media, two, because social media is then influencing the CNNs of the world to let Christiane Amanpour do a real interview, to let Jeremy Diamond do great reporting from inside the Gaza Strip. And now we're all seeing it with our own eyes and going, this is madness. How does this help anyone? And it becomes more obvious that it doesn't help Israel either. But Israel being in the middle of the conflict are even more blinded.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, I use my ethnic background as an example. If you have a Kurdish terrorist that does a bombing in Turkey and then you expect the Turkish people to be unbiased, you're nuts. They're not going to be unbiased. They're going to be in a blind rage. And as friends and allies, we should help them out of that blind rage instead of funding that blind rage, which is not going to help them. We go into Lebanon, we as in Israel and America, and this world gets turned upside down because there is no end to that war. And the entire world, if you think that Israel has problems now, the world will despise Israel. And it doesn't matter if you think that's the most unfair thing in the world and the goddamn Muslims had it coming and Hezbollah and the occupation is the greatest thing in the world and it should continue forever. It doesn't matter what you think. The world will absolutely hate Israel. And this guy, former head of Shin Bet, is saying, what are we doing? Why do we want the world to hate us? Why do we want to be in perpetual and endless war? Why don't we do the safe haven that we asked for and that we tried to build as Zionists? The guy's a Zionist and he's trying to protect Zionism. He's like, you do not protect Zionism and you do not protect Israel if you do endless wars that are going to end in disaster for us. He's absolutely right.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, I really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.